It began like any other morning. A group of K-9 officers gathered for routine training at a quiet cemetery. But then, the dogs started to act strange. One by one, they broke formation, ignored commands, and surrounded a forgotten grave. No one knew why, until they dug it up. What they discovered buried beneath changed everything the department thought they knew about war, about loyalty, and about a dog who refused to be forgotten. You're watching Heroic Animals, the true stories of courage, instinct, and heart that will stay with you long after the screen fades. Subscribe for more unforgettable tales where animals don't just survive, they save lives. It started with one K-9. Then two. Then a dozen. Officer Mark Dalton had seen his fair share of unusual behavior during training exercises. But nothing like this. Every K-9 in the unit, well-trained, disciplined, loyal, had broken protocol that morning during the routine scent drill at Hillside Memorial Cemetery. At first, it was just Rex, the youngest Malinois, who pulled off course toward the northeast corner of the graveyard. His handler called him back. He didn't listen. Then Tango, a seasoned blood tracker, did the same. Within minutes, all 12 K-9s were pacing, pawing, or outright digging at the base of an old headstone, one no one had paid attention to in decades. The name engraved on the stone was barely visible. M. Caldwell. No birth date, no epitaph, no flowers, just silence. Except for the dogs. They were restless, agitated. One even let out a long, mournful whine, as if grieving something no one else could feel. Captain Liza Monroe arrived on scene 20 minutes later. She wasn't the type to entertain superstition. But even she admitted, 12 K-9s. From different handlers, different backgrounds, all reacting the same way? That wasn't random. Could be remains of another body. Someone offered. Maybe drugs buried under it? Or bones from a cold case. Liza shook her head. Get the records on this plot. And have the forensics team here by dusk. We dig at first light. The grave had been untouched since 1983. No family. No visitors. No known relatives. The man buried there? Michael Caldwell. A janitor. Vietnam vet. Died penniless. Buried in a city plot. Nothing remarkable, on paper. But someone, or something, remembered him. And whatever was under that dirt was calling out to the dogs. The sun hadn't fully risen when the forensics team arrived at Hillside Cemetery. Officer Mark Dalton stood with arms crossed. His K-9 partner Rex unusually still at his side. The other handlers kept their dogs back. But the tension was palpable. Even the wind felt heavier. Captain Liza Monroe gave the nod. Start digging. The backhoe hummed to life. And with every scoop of earth lifted from the grave marked M. Caldwell. The unease grew. 4 feet down. They stopped. Manual now, said the lead technician. Shovels hit aged wood a few minutes later. The coffin was rotted around the edges. Warped from decades underground, but it was intact. Let's lift it. They pried open the lid slowly. And what they found inside made everyone take a step back. At first glance, it seemed ordinary. A skeletal body. Dressed in a faded military uniform. Tags still visible. A service flag folded beneath the ribcage. But it was what wasn't listed on the burial record that raised questions. There was a second shape. Pressed close to the remains. Nestled like it had been curled there for eternity. Was another body. Much smaller. Fur. Mummified. Bones intact. A dog. A large breed working dog. From what the vet tech quickly confirmed. An old collar still clung loosely around its neck. The tag was almost too rusted to read. But one word was still visible. Hawk. Everyone was silent. One of the K-9 handlers, Officer Simmons, removed his cap and whispered. He buried with his dog. Liza's voice was tight. That wasn't in the record. A forensic assistant chimed in. It wouldn't have been. You're not allowed to bury a dog in a city cemetery. It would have been against regulation, even in the 80s. So he hid it? Mark asked. No, someone else muttered. He protected it, even in death. Later that afternoon, they gathered more context. Michael Caldwell had been a military K-9 handler in Vietnam. His dog, Hawk, served beside him, 7 confirmed missions. 2 life-saving alerts on ambush traps. And 1 incident where Hawk reportedly shielded Caldwell from grenade shrapnel. They were wounded together. They were discharged together. They disappeared from the system, together. Caldwell had returned to civilian life with no family. No pension. No honors. Only Hawk. He worked as a janitor. Quiet. Alone. Never spoke much. But every morning, he walked Hawk past the police station without fail. He passed away in 1983. And no one came to claim him. No one but Hawk. The old cemetery records noted one oddity. The groundskeeper found the grave disturbed 2 days after burial. It had been lightly refilled. No report was filed. No one cared. Until now. The K-9s had known. Somehow, they had felt it. A resting place not just of death, but of unrecognized loyalty. Of something that resonated deep within them. Because Hawk was one of them. And none of them would let his story stay buried. That night, Liza stood alone at the edge of the grave, looking down at the reopened coffin now respectfully covered in tarp. She radioed the precinct quietly. "I want a full honor detail prepared. For both of them." "Ma'am?" the voice responded. "You mean, for the dog too?" Liza looked out over the rows of K-9s resting quietly beyond the gate. "I mean especially for the dog." They held the service at noon. The town of Mayfield hadn't seen a procession like this in decades, not for a politician. Not for a war hero. And certainly not for a janitor. But word had spread fast. Local news picked it up. Then regional. Then national. The headline read, "Retired war dog found buried beside handler, 40 years later." Community response. By the time the honor guard arrived at Hillside Cemetery, hundreds had gathered. Police officers in dress blues lined the paths. Veterans stood shoulder to shoulder. Medals glinting in the sun. But it was the dogs, over 24 K-9 units from neighboring counties, that made the crowd fall silent. They didn't bark. They didn't tug at their leashes. They simply stood, eyes forward, ears up, as if they too understood what was happening. This wasn't just a funeral. This was recognition. The casket had been replaced. A custom one. 2 flags draped over it now, one for Michael Caldwell, United States Army, and one for Hawk. War K-9, serial K9-1127. They lay side by side once more. But this time, everyone knew. Officer Mark Dalton was the first to speak. He stood before the crowd, clutching the original rusted dog tag that read, Hawk, in faded metal. "I didn't know Michael," he said. "None of us did. But every single person standing here today knows what he stood for. Because every K-9 handler dreams of a bond like theirs. To be followed, protected, trusted, not just in life, but in death." He paused. "And Hawk?" Hawk never left his partner. Even when the world did. Then came Sergeant Ellie Price, a retired handler from the Vietnam era. Silver hair tucked under her cap. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "They didn't just serve together," she said. "They bled together. And when they came home, no one welcomed them. But Michael gave Hawk everything he had left. And when the time came, Hawk returned the favor. He chose to go with him." She pointed to the line of K-9s quietly watching. "They feel it. That's why they came. Loyalty this deep doesn't stay in the ground." And then, as the final salute began, something extraordinary happened. As the bugler played taps, the K-9s, without command, sat in perfect formation. One by one, silent, still, at full attention. And then Rex, Officer Dalton's dog, the one who first pulled toward the grave, let out a single low howl. Not frantic, not distressed, just pure, mournful, the kind of sound that doesn't come from training, but memory. One by one, the other K-9s joined him. Dozens of voices, unified in grief, in honor, in recognition. It was a song for the ones who had never been sung for. Until now. After the burial, a bronze statue was unveiled near the entrance to Hillside Cemetery. It depicted a soldier kneeling, hand resting on the head of a German shepherd, both eyes forward, both worn, scarred, together. The plaque read, "Michael and Hawk, side by side, forgotten by many, remembered by all." That night, Officer Dalton returned to the grave alone. He knelt beside Rex, looked out across the rows of headstones, and whispered, "You brought him home, buddy." Rex leaned his head gently against Dalton's shoulder. And for a moment, neither man nor dog moved. Because they both knew, this story was bigger than war. Bigger than rules. Bigger than death. It was about loyalty that doesn't fade. And love that doesn't ask permission to endure. 2 days after the funeral, As the maintenance team finished resetting the headstone and plaque, one of the cemetery workers flagged down Officer Dalton. "Sir, we found something." Buried beneath the original coffin liner, wedged between two boards of warped cedar, was a sealed canvas pouch, likely placed by Michael Caldwell himself before burial. Inside was a small, water-damaged notebook. The first few pages had rotted away. But the rest? Still legible, still intact, still powerful. Dalton brought it straight to Captain Liza Monroe, who gathered the handlers and forensics team in the precinct's main conference room. They laid the journal on the table like it was sacred. Because it was. The first clear entry was dated March 11, 1982. "He's getting older. So am I. We limp in unison now. I don't know who follows who anymore." Another, dated just a few weeks later. "They say I can't bury him with me. That it's improper. That dogs don't belong in graves made for men. But they're wrong. This dog carried me through jungle, gunfire, loss. He didn't ask why I cried in my sleep. He didn't care when no one else wrote me letters. He just stayed. And when the world forgot us, he didn't. So I won't leave him behind." A long pause followed in the room. Some of the officers looked away. Others didn't hide their tears. Dalton flipped to the last entry. The handwriting was shakier, fainter, but the message was clear. "If you're reading this, thank you. You found us. Please don't let him be buried a secret. He gave everything. He warned me about traps I never saw. He found a child in the rubble when the bombing stopped. He knew before I did when my heart would break. They say dogs can't feel like humans do. But if you ever meet one like Hawk, you'll know that's a lie. Tell the others, the ones with leashes in their hands and fear in their chests. Tell them to trust the bond. It's stronger than war, stronger than silence, stronger than death." Captain Liza Monroe closed the notebook gently, then turned to the wall behind her, where photos of every active K-9 unit in the county were pinned. "You heard the man," she said softly. "Tell the others." And they did. Within weeks, a digital copy of the journal had made its way across the country. From precincts in Chicago to training grounds in Texas, handlers passed it along. Some read it aloud to their dogs during late-night shifts. Others placed a copy inside their vests, close to the chest. It became known unofficially as the Caldwell Pages. Not doctrine, not a manual, but something more honest, something real. A voice from a man long gone, still speaking to those who walk the same path today. At the hillside cemetery, flowers now appeared weekly at Michael and Hawk's grave. Some left medals, others left photos of themselves and their K-9 partners. One day, a child came with her mother. Her dad had been a handler, lost in the line of duty. She stood quietly, then placed a single tennis ball at the base of the headstone. "For the good boy," she whispered. "Paw prints fade, leashes fray, names get worn down by time. But stories like Michael and Hawk's? They echo. In every bark that saves a life. In every sniff that finds a child. In every silent moment where dog and human simply understand." Captain Liza Monroe wasn't expecting any more surprises. Not after the funeral. Not after the journal. Not after half the country had cried over a man and his dog buried in silence. But then her desk phone rang. Not her cell. Not dispatch. Her landline. The one that only rang when it mattered. "Monroe," she answered. The voice on the other end was quiet. "Old, worn by time and maybe regret. You're the one who found Hawk, right? The war dog?" "Yes." "Who is this?" "Name's Gerald Paxton. I was SID, Criminal Investigations Division, back in '82. Retired now. But I think I have something you need to see." An hour later, Monroe and Officer Dalton sat across from Paxton at his kitchen table, surrounded by decades of boxed files and unopened letters. "I was the one assigned to Caldwell when he came back," Paxton said, pouring coffee with shaking hands. "He wasn't well. PTSD, they'd call it now. Back then, they just called it trouble adjusting." Dalton leaned in. "What kind of trouble?" Paxton sighed. "He saw something. Right before discharge. Said Hawk found something in a burnt-out village outside Da Nang. Claimed it didn't sit right. Said he couldn't stop dreaming about it." "And?" Monroe pressed. "He filed a formal report. I read it. It was messy. Names, coordinates, accusations. Not against the enemy, against our own." Monroe's eyes narrowed. "You're saying he uncovered something internal?" Paxton nodded. And the army buried it. Literally. His report vanished. He was discharged within weeks. No follow-up, no investigation. Dalton sat back, stunned. And you're only telling us this now? I didn't believe him, Paxton admitted. But then I saw the headlines. The grave, the journal. And I remembered, he mentioned keeping a backup. Said Hawk wouldn't let it go. That the dog kept returning to a spot in the woods even after the fighting stopped. He handed them a photo. Black and white, faded, but clear enough. Michael and Hawk standing beside a half-buried metal ammo crate in a patch of jungle. Michael was pointing. Hawk was digging. On the back, March 1974 to 17 clicks east of Hill 442 inches. A location. A possible cache. And maybe, evidence. Back at the precinct, Monroe called in a favor from a military liaison she hadn't spoken to in years. 3 days later, they had confirmation. The coordinates pointed to a now declassified zone once known as Zone Echo. Remote, forgotten, but one of the last places Michael and Hawk had ever deployed together. And more chillingly, no final patrol logs existed for their last mission there. It was as if someone wanted that part of their service erased. Dalton stared at the photo for a long time. Do you think the crate's still there? He asked. Monroe didn't blink. I think Hawk never forgot it. I think that's why Michael buried the journal. Why he begged us to remember. Not just the bond, but the truth behind it. She looked over at the row of K9 portraits along the wall. We don't just owe them a statue. She tapped the photo. We owe them closure. The jungle had grown thick over the years. The foliage was denser now. The trails, long abandoned, covered by vines and decades of silence. But the air still felt the same. Heavy. Watching, Captain Liza Monroe stepped off the chopper with Officer Dalton behind her. Both wearing light tactical gear and led by a Vietnamese liaison named Keen. This way, Keen said. The coordinates are 2 kilometers east. No roads. We walk. Dalton tightened his pack. Let's find Hawk's trail. They moved in single file. The deeper they went, the quieter everything became. Even the birds seemed to hush as they approached the site once known, at least unofficially, as Zone Echo. I keep thinking about that photo. Dalton whispered. Hawk wouldn't stop digging. What was he trying to show them? Monroe didn't answer. She was thinking the same thing. After nearly an hour of hiking, Keen raised his hand. Here. They stood in a clearing. Partially collapsed trees scattered around the edges. The remains of a perimeter post lay half buried in moss and red clay. And in the center, a mound, unnatural in shape, flattened by time, but still distinct. They began to dig, carefully, respectfully. And within 20 minutes, the first scrape of metal. A rusted corner. Then a handle. Then the lid of a long-forgotten military ammo crate. Dalton pried it open with a crowbar. Inside, wrapped in rotting cloth and oiled canvas, a stack of old military tapes labeled Echo, Opus 74C. One dog tag, Hawk's backup identifier, etched with his full serial number. A blood-stained field report, pages faded but still legible. And a cassette recorder. Monroe turned it over, still intact. Dalton stared at the tapes. We found it. Monroe knelt beside the open crate, breath shaking. This is what they tried to bury. Back in Hanoi, at a secure facility arranged by the embassy. They played the tapes. The voices crackled to life, distant through layers of static. This is Sergeant Caldwell. March 24, 1974. Patrol log. Zone Echo. Hawk is signaling again. 3rd time today. Same direction. Something's off here. These coordinates don't match the op order. Why would they be running a resupply drop here? Found cache not listed in mission brief. Medical crates. US marked. But supplies inside are not medical. A long pause. Then, contaminants, unmarked vials, and children's clothing. Dalton looked up sharply. Wait, what? The next tape was even harder to listen to. We weren't supposed to find this. 2 civilians found dead. No visible wounds. No one is talking. Command is calling it a failed drop. But I know what I saw. If anything happens to me, Hawk will lead someone back here. He knows. He remembers. Monroe stood in stunned silence. This isn't just a cover-up. She whispered. This is a war crime. The next week moved like a whirlwind. The contents of the crate were handed to military investigators. Confirmation came. The site was part of an undocumented chemical testing zone, never disclosed. Caldwell's reports had indeed been suppressed. But because no one had followed up, the incident had been quietly buried. Until now. Until Hawk led them back. Nearly 50 years later. As Monroe and Dalton boarded the plane home, she looked down at the crate's label. Carved faintly into one side, almost invisible beneath the grime, were 2 scratches, claw marks. 3 long gouges, left by a dog who refused to forget. The Capitol was quiet that morning. Not because of lack of attention, quite the opposite. For the first time in decades, a full congressional hearing had been called, not just to acknowledge a buried military error, but to publicly honor a war dog and his handler, posthumously. Inside the chamber, the air was thick with emotion. On a pedestal near the front stood 2 things. A folded American flag, presented in honor of Michael Caldwell. And beside it, a polished brass plaque engraved with a single word. Hawk. War K9, unshakable loyalty. Eternal watch. The hearing was brief, but powerful. Captain Liza Monroe testified first. Her voice unwavering. We didn't find them through military records. We didn't find them because someone filed the right paperwork. We found them because a dozen modern K9 dogs refused to ignore one of their own. They knew. They always know. Then came Officer Mark Dalton, holding the original journal. This wasn't just about a dog. It was about a promise, that no partner gets left behind. And Hawk never did, not even after death. He paused, holding up the torn page with Michael's final words. Tell them to trust the bond. It's stronger than war, stronger than death. At the end of the hearing, a hush fell over the room as the committee chair stood. By unanimous vote, we hereby authorize full recognition of War K9 Hawk and Sergeant Michael Caldwell for service above and beyond the call of duty. Their story will be preserved in the National War Dog Archives, and a permanent memorial will be commissioned. The chamber erupted in applause. Tears fell, but no one clapped louder than the row of uniformed K9 handlers lining the back of the room. Their dogs sat proudly beside them. Not one barked. Not one blinked. It was their moment. 3 months later, at Arlington National Cemetery, a new section was quietly added. A granite headstone stood in polished silence. It read, Sergeant Michael Caldwell, Vietnam veteran, faithful beyond command, K9 Hawk. He followed when no one else would. And at the base of the headstone, dozens of paw prints pressed into the concrete. Not carved. Real. Made by the K9s brought in during the ceremony. One by one, so that Hawk would never lie alone again. That afternoon, as visitors trickled away and the sun dipped low, Dalton knelt beside the grave. Rex sat beside him, tail gently swaying. Dalton whispered, "We finished it." Rex didn't move, just leaned into him, warm and calm, like Hawk once did, like all the good ones do. 3 weeks after the Arlington ceremony, a small manila envelope arrived at the Mayfield Police Department. No return address, just 3 words written in neat cursive. For Hawk's team. Officer Mark Dalton found it on his desk. He turned it over once, twice, then opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter and a faded photograph. He began to read. Dear officers, I saw the story on the news. I wasn't sure if I should write. But I think I'm the reason Hawk kept returning to that place in Vietnam. My name is Tan. I was a child during the war. My family lived near what your maps call Zone Echo. One day, soldiers came. Not American, not Vietnamese, just men with fear in their eyes and something evil in their hands. Dalton stopped reading for a moment. His hands trembled slightly. He continued. I was hiding under a broken cart. I remember the smell of smoke. Screams. I thought I would die there. Then I saw a shape move toward me. A dog. Big. Quiet. His eyes didn't show fear. Only purpose. He nudged me once. Then again. And when I didn't move, he lay down beside me. Stayed still. Kept me warm. Until the shouting stopped. The next day, I was found by a man in a dirty uniform. I think he was American. He carried me out in his arms. The dog walked behind. That was the last time I saw them. Dalton looked up, eyes glassy. Captain Monroe had joined him quietly. Keep reading, she said gently. I never knew their names. Never got to say thank you. But when I saw the photos, I knew. It was Hawk. And the man you buried beside him. He was the one who carried me back to life. I'm an adult now. I have children of my own. I work at a school. And every year, on the day I was rescued, I take my students to clean the statues at our local animal shelter. Because I was saved by a dog. And by a man who saw my life as worth risking his. At the bottom of the letter was a single sentence. Please tell them, I never forgot. Attached to the letter was a photograph. A little boy, barefoot, leaning against a large German shepherd with matted fur and tired eyes. In the corner stood a young soldier, thin, gaunt, but smiling. Dalton turned it over. Written in faded ink. Da Nang, 1974. Michael, Hawk, and the boy. The station went quiet that day. No one said much. They didn't have to. The weight of the letter settled into their bones like truth always does. Michael and Hawk hadn't just exposed injustice. They hadn't just kept a promise. They had saved a child. And in doing so, they'd passed that light forward. Later that night, as Dalton walked out into the twilight with Rex by his side, he placed a copy of the letter into a frame and hung it next to the memorial photo on the wall. Two heroes. One story. Forever known. He knelt beside Rex and whispered, "We don't always know the difference we make." Rex pressed his head into Dalton's shoulder. As if to say, "But we make it anyway." Spring came quietly to Mayfield. The grass grew greener around Hawk and Michael Caldwell's grave. Fresh flowers appeared almost daily, not from one person, but many. Handlers, veterans, children, strangers who had seen the story and felt something awaken in them. At the precinct, things returned to routine. Almost. Because something had changed. There was a new plaque in the K-9 training wing. The Hawk Standard. In honor of all K-9s who protect without question, love without condition, and remember when others forget. And beneath it, framed and lit, was a scanned copy of Michael's journal page. Tell them to trust the bond. Every new handler read it on day one. It wasn't a requirement, but no one ever skipped it. The biggest change, however, came from a place no one expected. A woman named Sarah Caldwell walked into the precinct one Tuesday morning. Mid-30s, soft-spoken, eyes like Michael's. She was his niece. "I never knew about any of this," she said. "He left when I was a baby. My father never spoke of him. But then I saw the video online, and I realized the man the world was honoring was my uncle." She asked to see the journal, held the dog tag in her hand, and then she said, "I want to help make sure this never happens to another forgotten handler. Or his partner." 1 month later, the Hawk and Caldwell Foundation was launched. A nonprofit dedicated to preserving the stories of forgotten K-9 veterans, supporting retired police and military dogs, offering burial assistance and memorial grants for handlers who passed without family. The motto? No partner left behind, in life or death. The first donation? A check from a 12-year-old boy in Oklahoma. $18.75, all saved from mowing lawns. His note read, "For the dog who never left his friend." That summer, Rex, Officer Dalton's partner and the first to detect Hawk's grave, officially retired. At his final training demo, something remarkable happened. Just before the ceremony ended, Rex wandered toward the memorial plaque. He sat down, and wouldn't move. Dalton knelt beside him, hand on his back. "He remembers," Dalton whispered. "He always will." On the anniversary of the discovery, a small ceremony was held at Arlington. No cameras, no speeches, just silence, just respect. As the sun set, a soft breeze swept across the rows of stone. And at Caldwell's grave, a small card had been left behind. No name, just one line. "You were never forgotten. We just didn't know where to look." And somewhere, wherever loyal souls go when they've done all they can, a soldier and his dog walked again. Side by side, without pain, without war, without silence, only peace, only love, only forever. Michael Caldwell may have left this world in silence, but his loyalty and Hawk's unbreakable devotion echoed loud enough for a new generation to hear. They weren't looking for medals. They didn't ask to be remembered. But now, they always will be. If this story moved you like it moved us, please consider hitting the like button and sharing it with someone who believes in the bond between animals and humans. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you known a dog like Hawk? Or a moment when loyalty changed everything? Tell us. And don't forget to subscribe to Heroic Animals for more real stories of courage, instinct, and heart. Until next time, take care. And never underestimate the heart of a dog. Paw.